if you believe that you are going through burnout, you're not broken. Your life is not broken. There is a brighter side, a brighter ending, though you're going through this right now, and really understand that you have the power to change it.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Consult a qualified professional for your needs. Views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and not necessarily those of Meet Your Mental Helper Podcast LLC or its affiliates. We are not responsible for actions taken based on this content.
Hi, I'm James Weisbecker. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Ohio, Texas, Virginia, and Delaware. I started the Meet Your Mental Helper podcast because I found that there were a lot of podcasts with people who are either celebrities or talking about knowledge they've heard from celebrities. When I went to trainings, and I still go to trainings, and met fellow colleagues, I realized that the everyday therapists, counselors, coaches, people that really put in the work and effort to learn and to share that knowledge, that healing knowledge with clients, knew so much more. And I thought it's a shame they don't have a voice. It's a shame that people can't learn about who's actually in their community making a difference. And that's why I started the Meet Your Mental Helper podcast. Let's meet today's guest on Meet Your Mental Helper. And welcome to Meet Your Mental Helper. Today's guest is Ronke Adetolu, a TEDx speaker, quality assurance manager, and the founder of LeadWise Workforce Solutions. With more than a decade of experience leading quality and operational excellence in regulated industries, Ronke now helps high-achieving professionals move from burnout to alignment by reconnecting with their values, purpose, and daily habits. Today, we'll explore why so many successful people burn out even when they are doing everything right, and what it actually takes to create a life that is both successful and sustainable. And welcome, Ronke.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my honor. And Ronke, you said that the word burnout, the question is, what does it really mean to you? How's that definition changed over the years?
Yeah. So I would say over the years, even with my research in burnout, I've seen many causes of it, but one cause that I think is primarily overlooked is burnout as a source of misalignment. Right. And we know so many things
Mm-hmm.
can contribute to burnout, whether it's stress from work, caretaking for a family member, and just so many things that can contribute to burnout. But I think oftentimes it's overlooked the aspect of misalignment with your values.
Right. And you had mentioned that um, on the outside you looked successful, but inside you were exhausted and living on autopilot. So it sounds like you there's a root to this.
Yes, it definitely was a personal aspect. It was a point in my career. I'm so grateful it's not right now, but it was a point in my career where on the outside, as you probably know, everything looks great, right? So people are giving you the accolades that, you're doing a great job and all that you do. But on the inside, I was just chronically tired. Right? And the things that I enjoyed, I didn't enjoy them as much. I just really felt like everything took so much effort to do. And it's only but so long that you can continue to thrive in that way until you start getting feedback, whether it's from your body or from other people that are around you that saying, hey, you're a bit edgy than you used to be. You know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started getting that feedback, and I think that feedback really came from myself because I looked at things that I enjoyed doing, like working out and just really conversations with friends and family on the phone. everything felt like a heavy lift. And it got to the point that I was not working out as much as I wanted to. And I just felt really misaligned in so many areas of my life. And luckily, it was a weekend, and I intentionally said, I'm going to sit down and I got to figure this out. Right. I can't keep going through feeling the chaos of life and not doing something about it. And so I was able to kind of take that time with myself and reflect and understand what was occurring, right? Like, hey, this was just not a stressful day. It was more of a stressful period.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what, was there a tipping point, something that where you said, I can't keep doing this?
Oh, yeah. And I allude to this in my TEDx talk. I was driving home from work one evening and I was exhausted. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to get more rest. And then I started thinking that, hey, I feel like I'm getting more rest, but it's just not helping. Right? And so I almost started to question myself like, okay, what are we going to do about this? Right? You have those moments when it's just yourself in the car. And luckily for the consultant role that I was doing at that time, it was almost like a 40-minute drive. So I always had so much time to reflect, but I would fill it up with another audio book or something that, could help me to continue to learn. But this time on the drive home, I just sat in silence and I started to reflect more. And, it was kind of that um, eerie feeling inside of the rest is not going to fix this. Right. And I just really, really just started thinking about that. And I told myself that this weekend when I get home, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper to understand kind of what is the source of how I'm feeling. And the bigger part of it, like I told you, I felt so misaligned on so many aspects of my life. Like career was going forward, but that was the only thing that was moving forward. And I just wasn't happy as I was before. So I did have that time that weekend to really reflect. And I won't say that I turned the page overnight, but I started to understand what are the things
Mhm.
that are bringing me happiness, right? Like, how have I got so far away from those at this point? And then what are the things that are draining me? And so I started to look at like the things that were draining me and to determine how could I eliminate those. And then I gave myself that weekend to say, what's one thing that I can implement? Right? What can I implement immediately?
Mhm.
Not a million things, but just one thing. And I told myself I would do that consistently until I got more to a comfortable baseline.
Gotcha. So, let's do a little deeper dive on what living out of alignment means. I think you're kind of touching on it, things that are draining you, perhaps. But because I would say, there's a lot of misalignment when I talk to people. Right there,
Mhm.
maybe they're in a job that pays them well, but they're just almost physically. Sometimes they are physically sick or mentally they're really out of sorts. But they also feel like, well, I can't, change. I've got a mortgage to pay and I've got got all these things to do. So right. So what is, let's do a little more on what that means when you're out of alignment
Mhm. Yeah, so
in your life.
misalignment. Yeah, absolutely. Misalignment can take on different forms for different people, right? So misalignment again can look like, hey, the relationships that I have, whether it's family relationship, those relationships feel diminished, or they don't feel as giving, or you just feel misaligned with those relationships. It can come in the form of things that you once enjoyed, you don't enjoy them anymore. It feels more like a burden. And also, it can come in not just, the one off being irritated, but it's almost that like that's your undertone of irritation and it continues chronically. And so I think those are some of the distinguishing things from stress, just a stressful day, and burnout, which is more prolonged. And I think the biggest aspect with burnout is sometimes the person doesn't see a way out, right? They feel like this is how my life is going to be, regardless of the effort that I put in, regardless of the effort that I don't put in. They just don't see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And why do high achievers seem especially vulnerable to this?
I think it's almost just the way that I'll say we and they are wired as well for achievement. Because oftentimes, as a high achiever, you think burnout means you should do more, right? You start thinking that, hey, there's a space between where I am and where I need to be, perceived where I need to be, and you continue to add more and more to the plate rather than stepping back and taking an approach to say, what am I doing that may not be adding value that I can eliminate? What are the things that I'm always saying yes to? I was a victim of that too. Like, anytime something needed to be done or someone needed something, it's that, kind of chronic people pleaser. And sometimes as high achievers, we're leaders. And so we feel that that responsibility is ours, right? We feel the responsibility to fix things. We feel the responsibility to ensure everything is going well. And with that, sometimes comes additional responsibilities that we inadvertently take on.
Right. Your plate gets super full, or it
Sure.
maybe high achievers look at it as a weakness if they can't do
Yes.
everything.
You're exactly right. I,
Right.
I agree with you.
Where do you see imposter syndrome with that as well? Because a lot of people with imposter syndrome are high achievers,
Yeah.
and they always feel like they have to do 5 times as much to prove they belong, so to speak.
Yeah, I think probably the root of that is just understanding from a self-worth standpoint. And sometimes there is a disconnect, and who you are is not what you do. Right? And a lot of times, if there is an overlap, then that line becomes very blurred. But understanding that who you are as a person can be outside of what you do as a profession, and not allowing that to be the only rubric that you use to determine, am I successful? Right? Sometimes, you have to look at all aspects of our lives and determine what is important, what is a priority, whether it's, for example, if it's family, understanding your values around family and then asking yourself, am I aligning myself with what I value? Right? Even if it's health, am I aligning my actions around what's important to me, and being able to balance those expectations?
Yeah, and a lot of I guess you'd call it self-help advice is to be around people who are aligned with you or have that positive energy, or they're going in the same direction you're going. And sometimes that's not family, right? Sometimes that
Yes.
can, or sometimes the people closest to you are the saboteurs, so to speak. What do you advise on that?
I agree with you. Sometimes the people closest to you are the energy vampires, and a lot of times you may not be able to
Yeah.
find your source of comfort there. And sometimes they may just, mean well, but not have the right knowledge or the right tools to give you, to come out on the other side of being burnt out. Sometimes or oftentimes people are told, take a vacation, right? Take time off work, or, some of those typical things. But
Mhm.
once we understand that even though we go on vacation, we're always with ourselves, right? So you still go with yourself on vacation. And oftentimes when we pull away from the work as high achievers, you're worrying about the work, right? And when you come back from vacation, the worrying is already starting to happen on the drive back. So you never truly disconnect. And again, even when you disconnect for those short periods of times, if you've not implemented a different way of doing things or implementing a different system, you're still going to come back and it's just a reoccurring cycle.
That's so true. I often hear people or friends say, "Well, I was on vacation, it was great, but it almost seems worse once I got back."
Yeah, because in those circumstances, I mean, I know as the leader, you come back and you come back to so many emails and, just things that you need to complete or that was uncompleted while you were away. But I can definitely understand how people can feel that way.
Yeah. So it's really, I think what you're saying is I heard this phrase once that you need to wake up every day wanting to do that day. Does that kind of
Hmm.
make sense? In other words,
Yeah.
rather than just taking a vacation, you have to change your life so that you're waking up to go, I, I'm looking forward to doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, and that's an excellent state to be at. But I think that's created with intention, right? And so we don't just automatically wake up and that happens. But like you're saying, once we have that intention, then we can start building the framework around that to say, what does an ideal day look for me? Right? With my current circumstances of where I am, how can I build an ideal day that's going to be beneficial towards me? And sometimes that comes in creating a schedule, like understanding, okay, how does my schedule, what does my daily schedule look like? Right? A lot of times, individuals may not have a synchronized schedule to where they're doing the same thing every day. And then our body experiences chaos. And then we're off into the deep end again. But understanding how can I set up my day to be more consistent, right? We may not have control of our full day, but even the first 20 minutes, the first hour of the day, if you claim that as your own and build in a system that actually gives you energy that helps ground yourself. There's some even small things like that can help, right? Maybe it's not a full hour again, maybe it's 15 minutes, but you are in control of that aspect. And the more we feel in control as human beings, the more our cortisol levels can decrease, right? And we can not feel as stressed.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Control. And that's something, control's critical. If you feel like you, and I think a lot of people that are burned out feel like they're just swimming in it, just trying to keep their head above water. I get to the office and there's this huge 40, 50 emails that have accumulated since yesterday. And all of a sudden a new meeting's been scheduled. And all of a sudden everyone's telling me you got to come and take care of this thing, put this fire out, and they're in a situation though where, this is their career. This is what they do. They can't just walk away from it, and start a donut shop or something, right? So, what? You hear these stories of people that walked away from Wall Street and
Yes.
started making donuts, or. But what would you? Where would you start with a person that's just kind of getting blown with the cyclone once they're at work, or they can't turn it off when they get home. There's still
Yeah.
people texting them. There's still it's still people saying, "Hey, this is going on, that's going on."
Mhm. Well, I think it's first understanding that you are a priority, right? We prioritize many things in our life, but understanding that without them prioritizing themselves, everything else around them doesn't happen. Right? So understanding that first and then embodying that, but also knowing that even throughout the day, though it may be aspects of that day that you can't control, you can implement maybe small breaks, even if it's, a small 3-minute reset where you're, deep breathing, belly breathing to kind of bring yourself back to present. But just throughout the day, it's not allowing your tank to run to E, but to understand it throughout the day, you can take breaks every hour and say, what do I need to do that's going to revitalize me? right? Even if that's a walk, you just have to be able to determine that for yourself, kind of what ritual do you want to put in place that's going to revitalize you and give you energy. And then now, when the person comes back, they're ready to take on those tasks. I think another part of that is understanding, what is a priority? What meetings do you truly have to be present for? And creating sometimes rules around that, hey, if there is a meeting that I'm invited to that I won't be able to give a direct contribution, I may have to decline that. Right? And being okay with that, because every meeting that we're invited to doesn't mean that we always have to attend. Understanding that there is a button that says yes and then one that says no. And then the other button that says tentative, right? You'll have to determine or TBD. But understanding that you don't have to attend every meeting and understanding that you can schedule increments in between your day to revitalize yourself and understand what you need to do to revitalize yourself.
What do you see as the beliefs that keep people stuck in this area? What I
Yeah.
can tell
The
you what some
beliefs
of 'em what I believe some of them are, but what do you think?
I think the belief that and nothing it can't change, right? Like if we have that belief in our mind
Mm.
that this is never going to change, this situation is not going to change. I've seen my family members go through burnout, all of those preconceived notions. Um, and then we stop there, right? So once we have in our mind that there's no way out of this, then we're not thinking about ideas or possibilities that may be outside of that circumstance.
Kind of tunnel vision.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some that you think?
They've got um things I hear from clients are often like, well, I didn't have time to breathe for 30 seconds, which sounds really irrational, but they'll say, no,
Yeah.
things were so hectic. Yeah. Or, I think you nailed that one about there's a certain hopelessness. Like, this is the way my company is, and they just keep doing more with less, and it's just going to
Yeah.
be me trying to, shovel my way out of the mine, so to speak.
It's almost like a victim mindset. And I don't say that to be punitive because I definitely have compassion for people who are
Mm.
experiencing it.
Yeah.
But just once I think someone can understand that it's a possibility that on the other side of burnout, you can get to alignment. And just understanding that your life is meant to be enjoyed, even from that premise, to understand that life is meant to be enjoyed, not endured. And then building from there to understand how can I
Mm.
enjoy kind of the hands that I'm dealt at this time to go forward and understanding that the current circumstance is not the circumstance forever and understanding that it is possible to move from burnout to alignment, but it will take work. And it will take work on their end to be able to identify what are the things that bring them enjoyment and trying to move closer to those things as possible.
Yeah. So, when somebody's battery is already depleted, right? Like sometimes people
Yes.
will say, I used to like to bake. We'll just pick up baking. I used to like to bake muffins, but they're so depleted that even the act of choosing something new seems overwhelming to them. What would you recommend?
Yes.
You mentioned you had a weekend where you just sat down and really thought about stuff. And
Mhm.
that's being pretty self-aware. Not everybody will do that.
No, I completely agree with you. I think I was just at the point to where I told myself I had to do it, right? And I'll use fitness for an example. Sometimes when I was kind of in that period, the thought of working out was just draining, right? And so I told myself, hey, I may not be able to do my full regimen, but I have to start somewhere if I want to see change. right? And so I started as I'm going to do a daily walk, right? And maybe someone can't say I'll start with a mile, but you can say, where's the closest stop sign in my neighborhood? I'm going to walk there and walk back. So sometimes it's understanding that you can start small, right? Maybe the person is not able to bake the full cake, right? But maybe it's, hey, let me just at least get the ingredients that I need. At least you know you're moving forward in that direction. And even if it's baby steps, it's something that's going to give the person hope that this can change.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe the person's not able to complete the entire action, but start small, right? And that's exactly what I had to do. I had to say, all right, I'm going to commit to a daily walk. I'm going to do a mile. That was feasible for me at that time. And even just doing that, it helped me kind of trust myself more. Like, okay, hey, I am in control of this aspect of my life. Similar to that, like I mentioned before, even just the daily morning routine, right? Part of that is that I said I need to be in more control of
Hmm.
aspects of my life. So I'm going to start with the first 20 minutes of my day. And I'm going to put in a schedule that rejuvenates me and makes me happy to start my day. And maybe that's 5 minutes and you're playing your favorite song, right? But you're committing to that, and that's how you're filling your cup.
Yeah. That's really great. I like, and it's definitely a growth mindset where you're focusing on the process and kind of telling yourself, I did this today. I just got a little stronger, and that's a
Hmm.
very valuable um mental thing to do. I had some health issues a while back, and I've just started doing anaerobic exercise again, but very, very lightly. And I'm just telling myself, "Hey, you're starting. You're starting.
Yes.
you know what I mean?" And there's something I think what we talked about earlier is just like having some control over it again. And when you're in control, you're like, it also builds momentum, right? Or once you start baking that cake, so to speak, or you get the ingredients, you start to have a little momentum, and I think that's a powerful thing too.
I agree. I like what you said when you said, with the health challenges and now you're starting back into the exercise, but you had grace for yourself, right? You had compassion for yourself to understand that it
Maybe,
is,
yeah, maybe too much.
but it still helped you to start. But you probably looked at, I may not be able to
Yeah,
go 100%, but I can start with 10. And like you said, I think there is some element with us feeling just more in control of our lives that helps reduce the stress that we have. And it gives us kind of that mindset that if I can control this aspect, maybe I can add something else. And I think that's what continues to help someone to get out of burnout, because it's almost like a snowball effect. Like, right? I'll give the 1 mile a day. So after the 1 mile a day, you're like, oh, let me check my eating habits, right? Oh, let me make sure I'm drinking water. Right. Naturally, you're probably going to drink more water, but it starts to spread to other aspects of our lives.
yeah, that's a good something, a good spreading that you want.
Yeah.
Right. And I always tell people too, if you take time out to recharge your battery, even though you feel super guilty about it, you're actually gonna be more productive.
I completely agree with you. Like I was mentioning, even those short moments throughout, a person's day, to understand, let me take 3 minutes just to recharge. Right. Something that I do, and at my job now, I'm grateful we have more of like a walk-in area. But sometimes in between meetings, I'll go out and just walk for a few minutes. But it makes such a difference just going out, getting fresh air, and then when I come back, I'm recharged for the next thing that I'm going to do in my day. But really, just understanding first to give yourself permission to say, I can take a break. I need to take a break, and this is prioritizing myself, right? And I think once someone has that understanding, they'll feel more empowered to do that.
Yeah, and I like the way you say give yourself permission, but also commit to it. Like no
Yes.
matter what, at the top of the hour, I'm going outside.
Mhm.
And
And some
nature is
mhm.
such a powerful regulator of the nervous system too.
Yes, I completely agree with you, and sometimes it takes it to the point of putting on a schedule, right? All of our other meetings are on our calendar, but scheduling in, even if it's an alarm on your phone or kind of a date with yourself on your calendar. And then as you do that, you evaluate, okay, hey, this is working, right? And then you determine how you want to continue to go forward. But I think it's important, even when people implement those things, to understand that you still may not be perfect. You still may not be able to, like you said, go at the top of the hour each time. But again, it's giving yourself grace and not giving up, right? Maybe it's from the onset, allowing yourself 30 days. Like, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick with this for 30 days and knowing that some days it may not happen, but just having that intent and then building a system around it, like I said, an alarm or a calendar schedule, but being intentional and
Yeah.
knowing what you're gonna do and when you're gonna do it, it helps us to be more successful.
Yeah. And I always try to tell clients who are working on things in counseling, if you don't expect to be perfect at it. It's not an all or nothing. Try this
Mhm.
stuff out. If you have an off day, so what? You just recognize that there's another day and keep the process going. Don't just go, well, I didn't get it done today, so screw it. It's all a waste.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, no,
people do
I
a
like
lot.
that. I really like
Yeah,
what you said.
it
It's almost like just resetting each day. Like, every
Hmm.
day you get up and you reset back at 0.
yeah. So what you uh, and I will also put Ronke's links under this podcast. So if you want to reach out to her or find her, I did remember watching when we first connected. I think it was on LinkedIn. I watched your TEDx talk
Mhm.
about saying yes, and I think at the time I might have emailed you back and said I have yes constipation was the term I might have used. So, and the reason I said that is I've had some things on the back burner for a while that I want to do, and I've been walking a fine line between obsessing over it and then getting upset and more burned. Not I don't want to say burned out, but just like oh, who wants to do that? To where
Right.
also I'm just kind of leaving them floating out there, but I'm kind of getting to that point of a yes to it, but maybe it's and watch Ronke's TEDx. It was really inspiring to me, but I definitely that's a challenge I have. How would you, if I were a client of yours, or if you were coaching me, what would you advise me to do?
Yeah, again, it goes back to similar what we were saying that sometimes, like you said, just the thought of going forward can be very exhausting. But I would say again, take those baby steps, right? Understand that it's okay. And I love what you said before about having the mindset that we're not perfect, right? And our actions are not going to be perfect. But it's first getting into agreement with yourself that a change is needed, right? Like, I cannot keep going in this same direction because, of course, at that point, you know that if you continue to do the same thing, you're going to receive the same feedback. And so, understanding that you're not perfect, none of us will be perfect, though we strive to be,
Hmm.
and literally just taking those baby steps of, okay, let me at least to open my emails and, maybe it's creating a system to say, all right, I'm going to just look at the things that are priority first, or I'm going to look at 2 emails a day, right? There are so many options that we can choose. And a lot of times, sometimes we don't step back to see those options, but we can create those rules for ourselves, right? I'm going to look at 2 emails per hour if that's what it is, and not feel like we have to kind of eat the whole elephant in one bite.
Yeah, and I think in your talk you mentioned the thing stopping people the most, if I heard it right, was confidence.
Yeah.
And and it's kind of back to, I think a lot of people do that imposter syndrome thing where they say everything's got to be just perfect before I
Yeah.
launch my donut shop or whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. I don't know why I have
Yeah.
donuts on the mind today, but
I know, I think I'm gonna grab a donut after this. But I'm with you on that. I used to be that way that everything I felt like everything had to be perfect. I'm sure it wasn't, but it's that paralysis, right? Even just over analyzing and then I realized that the only thing that really counts, and not that well, one of the major things that counts is when we take action. Right? We can think, I'll take it
Hmm.
back to a simple example of working out. We can think about working out, right? We can talk to our friend about working out. We can even watch a workout video on YouTube. But until we actually take action, all of that is almost for naught. And similar that you said that when we are taking action, a lot of times we think we need confidence to do it, but sometimes we have to say yes before we feel ready. And then
Hmm.
after we take action, the confidence comes. And we continue to build confidence when we keep our word to ourselves. That's one major thing that I realize is that, when you tell yourself, I'm going to do something and you actually do it, in your mind, you build confidence, and you probably know the science behind it more than me. But there is that kind of snowball effect that happens when we keep our commitments to ourselves. It gives us the confidence and the strength to know that if I set out to do something, I can actually do it.
yeah. Well, then some of the neuroscience behind that is if we're aware of it, and that's a key, right? If we're
Mm,
aware, like, hey, I planned on this and it worked out, you get a little ping of dopamine, and that dopamine is addictive. So it's a good addiction. It keeps you addicted to, I want to feel this again. I want to feel this victory again. And now then it, keeps snowballing from there, hopefully. Right.
yeah, that's very good.
So, so, in my situation, I am thinking about doing two or three things that are well within my capabilities. Like in my past lives, I've done things way harder than that, business wise or whatever. Right. But I also put a lot of effort into my current practice. And then when I have those open days, sometimes I'm just looking at my battery and saying, oh, let it go. Let it go. But, you know, um, there's just such a fine line, and then you have things to do in your regular life, maintenance on your house, maintenance on every, you know what I mean? Just so many things going on. Do I sound like I'm whining or
No, it sounds like you sound completely normal, completely, because there are so many there are priorities, right? There are things we have to do, and then there are priorities of things that we need to do. And sometimes I know it's worked for me before, and others is doing a complete dump. I usually do that on Sundays when I have my reset, but just write down everything you have to do, right? No specific order to it. And this is a technique that hopefully can help the viewers as well. But just write down everything you have to do. Like you said, mow the lawn, do taxes, whatever it may be. But put it all down and then be able to look at it all and then choose maybe two or three things that you can look at and say, this is a priority. And sometimes, even if we use kind of the 80-20 principle, one thing that you do may kind of avalanche and help other things open up. But we have to understand that everything cannot be a priority, right? There are a hierarchy of things that need
right?
to be done. But after you look at that list, understand what needs to be done the soonest. And at least you have a working list to work from. And we've now taken all of that information out of our heads and put it down on paper. And even with that, it's a relief, right? Because sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we feel like we're forgetting things, and we probably are. But just having it down all onto a central place that you can come back to. And I think the greatest satisfaction is when you finished one aspect or one thing off that list, mark it off. Do an exaggerated mark off or a checkbox or whatever it's going to
Yeah,
be feasible for you. But again, I think all of that is helping us to gain confidence that though I may have many things to do, everything can't be a priority. But
that's a great point.
prioritize what needs to be done. And then even if it's one per day, at least you're making gains, right? We think about a week if you work 6 days out of that week or will work 6 days, you're at least getting six things off that list, even if you choose one per day. Right. So
Hmm.
just being able to prioritize it and then take action on those things that need to be done.
It's back to getting control, right? Having that list
Yeah.
gives you some control, and control,
Mhm.
as you mentioned earlier, gives you a sense of you know, distress, relief, and emotional regulation, just having it down. One thing too, I find people often have a unrealistic view of the list. Like, I never get it all done. And I always try and tell
Yes.
people the list is alive. It's never going away. You just always work on it because the grass will grow again. You will have to mow it again. Right.
Correct.
But but I don't know if you run into this, but I run into people that go, well, I just never get the list done. And it's
Mhm.
kind of, I think, something where you have to reframe it and realize there's always going to be a list.
It is. I really like the way you put that because, like you said, the grass is going to grow again, right?
Hmm.
And if people are in a situation to where some of those things on their list, they can outsource it, and look to that alternative, right? So if we know
Yeah,
that mowing the grass is a source of stress, if there's a lawn company that can do it or a kid in the neighborhood that's trying to make money over the summer,
I was
determine the
that
things
kid.
that you
Yeah.
can. So
Yeah.
it's possible. There are other
Yeah.
answers beyond what we immediately see, and even bouncing it off a friend that has a growth mindset or a counselor, to help understand what are the other options. The only option is not to cut. You have to cut the grass. There are multiple options, but really stepping back to understand what other options can work for me in my situation.
What about, you know, I remember a guy, if he was a family friend who had multiple restaurants, right? He owned multiple restaurants and just worked in them sun up to sundown. He'd drive from one to the other, but he also seemed, and it was stressful, but he also seemed to just love it. But at
Yeah.
the same time, there wasn't a lot of balance in this person's life. And maybe he didn't love it as much as we thought because he had a heart attack. But
Oh
um,
no.
yeah, what do you think about people that are just, yeah, they work 18 hours a day, but they love those 18 hours?
Mhm. And I think that's the quite interesting thing about burnout and, kind of that fine line between someone is burnt out and then someone is just, kind of we'll call a workaholic, but loves what they're doing. Right. So it goes to those questions of what gives me energy? What do I like to do? Because one person working 60 hours a week, something they passionately love, they're probably not going to produce the high cortisol or those other, negative emotions towards it. And then the other person working 60 hours on something that's grueling to them, it's going to be a completely different path, right? And so
Right.
both individuals need to recharge and find a way to be able to be energized to go forward. But the person who loves what they do, they may need to recharge less, or, for them, sometimes not at all because they wake up excited to tackle their day or excited to see what the day brings. So I think that goes to understanding what brings you happiness, right? What brings you joy, and try to move the needle in that direction, right? Or consistently try to move the needle in that direction.
So, and I guess that would speak to the alignment, right? That person that
Yeah.
works 18 hours a day and loves it has a lot of that alignment. Their family may
Mhm.
not like it, but they have a lot of alignment.
Yeah, they're aligned with what hopefully they value and what they think is the purpose for their life. And they're happy with that usually.
Yeah. What what's one question you think everyone should ask themselves at least on a month, at least monthly? Maybe weekly,
My
but monthly.
Yeah, am I know it can sound, it's not always a question that we always try to allude to, but am I generally happy with my life, right? With this one life that we get, am I happy with it? Because I always go back to the premise that life is fundamentally, to me, meant to be enjoyed and not endured, right? So when we
I
can go
like
back
that.
and say,
Mhm.
yeah, that am I happy? And if I'm not, I need to reassess, right? That it's not okay for me to continue to go through my life in a stressful state or a state that's out of balance, and not accepting that as the norm. Because when we accept that as the norm, we continue to suffer. But if we can really ask ourselves from an overall standpoint, maybe not, just not today because traffic was horrible today, right? But if you can say,
Uh-huh.
overall, am I happy with my life? And if I'm not, I have the power to make those changes. And it's incumbent on myself to be part of that solution.
Yeah, that's powerful. As we kind of wind things down, what is there anything that we've kind of missed? I think you covered a lot of things that I find really helpful. But if for our listeners, if there's one thing that they could remember, and you've had more than one thing, but what would you tell somebody who just feels like this is my life now?
Yeah, I would tell them that if you believe that you are going through burnout, you're not broken. Your life is not broken. There is a brighter side, a brighter ending, though you're going through this right now, and really understand that you have the power to change it, even though it feels like in the immediate that you don't. Really come back to your core, and I would tell them to take a 3-step approach to this. One, understand what brings you enjoyment. Two, understand what is not bringing you enjoyment and be very clear on that, whether it's actions that you're taking, people around you, but understand what's not bringing you happiness. And lastly, commit to doing one thing to change that, right? And that may not always look like adding more to your plate. A lot of times it looks like taking off, removing things from your plate that drains you, and really open that time back up for things that replenish you.
Great advice. Well, Ronke, I am inspired. I'm gonna start doing the little small things each week and get the momentum
There's,
going. I kind of have been, to be honest with you, but this really reinforced it. So, and then, do you have anything coming up? Anything you want to let anybody know about? And as I mentioned earlier, I will put your links down below too.
Yeah, I will tell everyone continue to follow me. I am extremely active on LinkedIn. And I have other podcasts lined up. And so I'll keep everyone abreast of that and post it as I complete them. But definitely follow me daily because I know we all go through burnout at some phase in our lives, right? But I'm here to be an example because I experienced it before. And to show you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So follow me for more tips and posts that gives you the tools you need to be successful on the other side.
I'll definitely be following. So, Ron K, thank you so much. I keep saying Ron Ronke, thank you
It's
so much
okay.
for sharing your time with the viewers on Meet Your Mental Helper. And maybe we can do this again sometime. I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Meet Your Mental Helper. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. If you'd like to learn more about our guest, you can find them on our guest directory at meetyourmentalhelper.com. You can find their social media links to follow them and also ways to directly contact them. If you would like to be on the podcast, join our Meet Your Mental Helper network. And we have several memberships that support the work we do that allow unknown experts to be seen. Look forward to hearing from you soon and see you at our next podcast.